Hey, Freedom Flicker fam. Welcome back to the channel where we cut through the noise and get to the truth. Today, we're diving into a bombshell statement from former President Donald Trump. He says the U.S. has lost India and Russia to China after a major summit. What does this mean? Is the global order shifting right before our eyes? Are we witnessing the rise of a new power bloc? Or is this just Trump being Trump, stirring the pot with bold claims? In this video, we're going to unpack what happened at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, break down Trump's statement, and explore whether the U.S. is really losing ground to a China-Russia-India axis. Stick around, hit that like button, and let's get started. Before we dive in, make sure to smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our deep dives into the stories shaping our world. Let's set the stage. In early September 2025, Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted a major summit in Tianjin for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO. This is a group that includes China, Russia, India, and several Central Asian nations, and it's been growing in influence as a counterweight to U.S.-led alliances like NATO or the Quad. The SCO started as a security forum, but has evolved into a platform for economic and geopolitical cooperation, especially for countries skeptical of Western dominance. At this summit, we saw something striking. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Xi Jinping projecting unity. There were photos of them laughing, holding hands, and even Modi riding with Putin in his armored limousine. This wasn't just a photo op, it sent a message to the world. Now, why does this matter? The U.S. has been trying to pull India closer as a strategic partner to counter China, especially through groups like the Quad, which includes the US, India, Japan, and Australia. Meanwhile, Russia has been a longtime US adversary, and its growing ties with China have raised eyebrows. So when Trump says the US has lost India and Russia to China, he's pointing to a potential shift in global alliances. Let's look at what he said and why he's so fired up. On September 5th, 2025, Trump took to Truth Social and dropped this bombshell. Looks like we've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China. May they have a long and prosperous future together. That's classic Trump, blunt, dramatic, and not pulling any punches. He shared this post alongside an image of Modi, Putin, and Xi together at the SCO summit, clearly reacting to their display of unity. But what's got Trump so riled up? For one, he's been vocal about trade imbalances with India, calling the U.S.-India trade relationship a totally one-sided disaster. He's pointed out that India sells massive amounts of goods to the U.S., but charges high tariffs, sometimes up to 100% on things like U.S. cars or farm goods. In 2024, the U.S. had a $45.8 billion trade deficit with India, so Trump's frustration isn't new. On top of that, Trump's been hammering India for buying Russian oil, especially since he imposed a 50% tariff on Indian goods as a penalty for those purchases. He argues that India's oil deals with Russia are funding Putin's war in Ukraine, which undermines U.S. efforts to isolate Moscow. But here's the kicker. China's also a massive buyer of Russian oil, yet Trump hasn't slapped similar tariffs on Beijing. Why the double standard? We'll get to that later. So Trump's statement isn't just about a summit photo op. It's about his broader concerns. Trade deficits, India's ties with Russia, and the fear that the U.S. is losing influence to a China-led bloc. Let's dig deeper into what's driving this shift. So why are India, Russia, and China looking so chummy? Let's break it down. First, Russia. Since the Ukraine war started in 2022, Russia's been under heavy Western sanctions, so it's turned to China and India as major buyers for its oil. In 2024 to 25, India-Russia trade hit $68.7 billion, with India sourcing 37% of its crude oil from Russia. That's a huge jump from previous years, and it's driven by economics. Russian oil is cheaper, and India needs it to keep inflation in check for its 1.4 billion people. China, meanwhile, is pushing the SCO and BRICS as alternatives to Western-dominated systems like the G7 or IMF. Xi Jinping's vision is a global South order that prioritizes non-Western nations. and he's using the SCO to flex that muscle. At the summit, Xi took a veiled swipe at the U.S., calling for an end to hegemonism and power politics. That's code for challenging American dominance. But is this really a new axis against America, as some claim? Or is India just playing the field to protect its own interests? Let's analyze the bigger picture. Now, India's the wild card here. India's long prided itself on strategic autonomy, balancing ties with the US, Russia, and China. But Trump's tariffs, 25% initially, then bumped to 50%, have stung. India's exports to the US, its biggest market, are taking a hit, and New Delhi's not happy about what it calls unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable trade policies. Plus, there's a sense of hypocrisy. The West criticizes India's Russian oil buys, but turns a blind eye to its own imports of Russian uranium or fertilizers. This has pushed India closer to China and Russia, at least for now. Modi's visit to China for the SCO summit, his first since a deadly border clash in 2020, signals a thaw in India-China relations, partly driven by U.S. pressure. Some experts even suggest BRICS nations, including India, China, and Russia, are coordinating on bigger moves, like a new currency to challenge the U.S. dollar's dominance. Let's get to the big question. Is Trump right? Has the U.S. lost India and Russia to China? Well, it's not that simple. Let's start with Russia. Russia's already deep in China's orbit, economically and strategically, because Western sanctions have left it with few options. In 2024, China was Russia's top trading partner, and their military cooperation is growing. So Trump's not wrong that Russia's tied to China, but that's been true for years. It's not a new loss for the U.S. India is a different story. India's not lost to anyone. It's playing a multi-alignment game. Modi's government wants to keep strong ties with the U.S. for tech, defense, and investment, but Trump's tariffs and public criticism have bruised that relationship. When Trump calls India's trade policies a disaster or accuses it of funding the enemy with Russian oil, it pushes New Delhi to hedge its bets. India's not abandoning the U.S., but it's strengthening ties with Russia and China to protect its energy needs and strategic autonomy. What's ironic is that Trump's own policies might be driving the shift. His aggressive tariffs, 50% on Indian goods, have sparked backlash. India's even paused arms deals with the U.S. in retaliation. Meanwhile, China's offering India a seat at the table in a non-Western order, which is tempting when the U.S. seems unreliable. As one expert put it, India wants Russian cake and American pie. It's not choosing sides, it's diversifying. On the flip side, Trump's focus on India but not China for Russian oil purchases raises questions. Why single out India? Some speculate it's because China's a bigger economic threat, and Trump's avoiding a direct trade war with Beijing. Others say it's domestic politics. India's a softer target to rally his base. Either way, it's inconsistent, and it's fueling perceptions of U.S. double standards. The bigger risk? If the U.S. keeps alienating India, it could weaken the Quad and embolden China's vision for a new global order. But India's not fully in China's camp. Its border disputes with China and reliance on U.S. tech mean it's unlikely to ditch Washington entirely. Trump's claim might be exaggerated, but it's a wake-up call about how U.S. policies are reshaping alliances. Now let's play devil's advocate. Is Trump just blowing things out of proportion? After all, he's known for dramatic statements to grab attention. Some argue his deepest, darkest China line is more about rallying his base than reflecting reality. India's not lost. It's still a key U.S. partner in defense, with deals like the $3 billion drone sale in 2024. And Modi's government has been clear it wants to deepen ties with the West, even as it engages with China and Russia. Plus, India and China have their own tensions. Think border clashes in the Himalayas. The idea of them forming a tight alliance ignores those frictions. Russia, too, isn't just China's puppet. It's got its own agenda and long-standing ties with India, like their $100 billion trade target by 2030. Another angle? Trump's tariffs might actually work. India's reportedly offered to cut tariffs on U.S. goods to zero, though Trump says it's too late. If true, that's a win for his pressure tactics, not a loss. But there's no public evidence India made that offer, so it could be Trump spinning a narrative. Still, we can't ignore the optics. When Modi, Putin, and Xi are holding hands at a summit, it's a signal to the US that the world's changing. Trump's not wrong to notice, but his black and white framing, we've lost them, misses the nuance of India's balancing act and the complexity of global alliances. So where does this leave us? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this deep dive, give us a like, share this video, and subscribe to Freedom Flicker for more content.